Section 69 of Through Fairy Halls of My Book House. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Through Fairy Halls of My Book House, edited by Olive Beaupre Miller. The Golden Bird, a German Fairy Tale. In the olden time there was a king who had behind his palace a beautiful pleasure garden in which there was a tree that bore golden apples. One day when the apples were getting ripe, they were counted, but on the very next morning one was missing. This was told to the king, and he ordered that a watch should be kept every night beneath the tree. The king had 3 sons, the eldest of whom he sent as soon as night came on into the garden. But when it was about midnight he could not keep himself from sleeping, and next morning again an apple was gone. The following night the second son had to keep watch. It fared no better with him. As soon as 12 o'clock had struck he fell asleep, and in the morning an apple was gone. Now it came the turn of the third son to watch, and he was quite ready. The king had not much trust in him, and thought that he would be of less use even than his brothers, but at last he let him go. The youth lay down beneath the tree, but kept awake and did not let sleep master him. When it struck 12, he was still at his post watching. Then something rustled through the air, and in the moonlight he saw a bird coming whose feathers were all shining with gold. The bird alighted on the tree, and had just plucked off an apple when the youth shot an arrow at him. The bird flew off, but the arrow had struck his plumage, and one of his golden feathers fell down. The youth picked it up, and the next morning took it to the king and told him what he had seen in the night. The king declared at once, "The rascal that carries off my apples is none other than the beautiful golden bird that was stolen long ago from my garden. He must be found and restored to me." So the eldest son set out. He trusted to his own cleverness, and thought he could easily find the golden bird. When he had gone some distance, he saw a fox sitting at the edge of a wood. So he cocked his gun and took aim at him. "Do not shoot me," cried the fox, "and in return I will give you some good counsel. You are on your way to find the golden bird. This evening you will come to a village in which stand 2 inns opposite to one another. One of them is lighted up brightly and all goes on merrily within, but do not go into it. Go rather into the other, even though it seems a very plain one." "How should such a silly beast give advice to a wise fellow like me?" thought the king's son, and he pulled the trigger. But he missed the fox, who stretched out his tail and ran quickly into the wood. So the king's son pursued his way, and by evening came to the village where the 2 inns were. In one all the lights were lit, and there was singing and dancing, but the other had a poor, plain, dingy look. "I should be a fool indeed," he thought, "if I were to go into the shabby tavern and pass by the good one." So he went into the cheerful inn, lived there in pleasure and revelling, and forgot the bird and his father and all good counsel. When some months had passed and the eldest did not come back home, the second son set out to find the golden bird. The fox met him as he had met the eldest, and gave him the same good advice. But the second brother likewise paid no heed to his counsel. He came to the 2 inns, and his brother was standing at the window of the one from which came the music, and called out to him. He could not resist, but went inside, lived only for pleasure, and forgot the bird and all good counsel. Again months passed, and then the king's youngest son wanted to set off to find the bird. For some time his father would not allow it. "How should such a young know-nothing find the bird when his elder brothers have failed?" said he. But at last, as the lad gave him no peace, he let him go. Again the fox was sitting outside the wood and offered his advice. Now the youngest son was good-natured and modest, and willing to take good counsel, so he said to the fox, "Be easy, little fox, I will do you no harm, but will follow your advice." "You shall not repent it," answered the Fox, "and that you may get on more quickly, get up behind on my tail." Scarcely had the King's son seated himself when the Fox began to run, and away he went over stock and stone till his hair whistled in the wind. When they came to the village the youth got off. He followed the good advice, and without looking around turned into the little inn, where he spent the night quietly. The next morning, as soon as he got into the open country, there sat the Fox already, and said, "I will tell you further what you have to do. Go on straight ahead, and at last you will come to the castle where lives the king who has your father's bird. In front of the castle lies a whole regiment of soldiers, but do not trouble yourself about them, for they will be all asleep and snoring. Go straight through the midst of them into the castle, and go through all the rooms until at last you come to the chamber where the golden bird hangs in a plain wooden cage. Close by there stands an empty gold cage which is very splendid, but that cage is all for show. Beware of taking the bird out of the plain cage and putting it into the fine one, or it may go badly with you." With these words the Fox again stretched out his tail, the King's son seated himself upon it, and away he went over stock and stone until his hair whistled in the wind. When he came to the castle he found everything as the Fox had said. Through the midst of the snoring soldiers he made his way, and so on into the chamber where stood the golden bird. He was shut up in a wooden cage with the golden apples lying near. Hard by stood the splendid golden cage, and as the King's son looked at it, he thought, "It would be absurd if I were to leave the beautiful bird in the common and ugly cage." So he opened the door, laid hold of the bird, and put it into the golden cage. At the same moment the bird uttered a shrill cry. The soldiers awoke, rushed in, and dragged the youth off to prison. The next morning he was taken before a court of justice and sentenced to death. The king of the country, however, said that he would grant him his life on one condition, namely, if he brought him the golden horse which ran faster than the wind; and in that case he should receive, over and above, as a reward, the golden bird. The King's son set off, but he sighed and was very sorrowful, for how was he ever to find the golden horse? All at once he saw his old friend the Fox, sitting in the middle of the road. "Look you," said the Fox, "this has happened because you did not give heed to me, but be of good courage, I will give you my help again, and tell you how to get to the golden horse." At this the King's son rejoiced and promised once more to obey him. "You must go straight on," said the Fox, "and you will come to a castle where in the stable stands the horse. The grooms will be lying in front of the stable, but they will be asleep and snoring, and you can quietly lead out the golden horse. Of one thing only you must take heed. Put on him the common saddle of wood and leather, and not the golden one, which hangs close by, else it will go ill with you." Then the Fox stretched out his tail, the King's son seated himself upon it, and away he went over stock and stone till his hair whistled in the wind. Everything happened just as the Fox had said. The Prince came to the stable in which the golden horse was standing, but just as he was going to put the plain saddle upon him, he thought, "It will be a shame to such a beautiful beast if I do not give him the splendid saddle which belongs to him by right." So he flung the golden saddle over the horse's back. Scarcely had he done so when the horse began to neigh loudly. The grooms awoke, seized the youth, and threw him into prison. The next morning he was sentenced by the court to death, but the king promised to grant him his life and the golden horse as well, if he would bring back the beautiful princess from the golden castle. "The beautiful princess," he said, "is my promised bride, but her guardian keeps her forcibly from me." With a heavy heart the youth set out, yet soon he found the trusty Fox. "I ought only to leave you to the consequences of your own disobedience," said the Fox, "but I pity you, and will help you once more out of your trouble. This road takes you straight to the golden castle. You will reach it by eventide, and at night, when everything is quiet, the beautiful princess goes from the castle to the bathing house in the castle yard. When she enters it, run up to her and give her a kiss. Then she will wish to follow you, and you can take her away with you. Only remember this, do not allow her to take leave of anyone in the castle." Then the fox stretched out his tail, the king's son seated himself upon it, and away the fox went over stock and stone till his hair whistled in the wind. When he reached the golden castle, it was just as the fox had said. He waited until midnight, when everything lay in deep sleep, and the beautiful princess was going to the bathing house. Then he sprang out and gave her a kiss. She said at once that she would like to go with him, but she asked him pitifully and with tears to allow her to take leave of the king, her guardian. At first he withstood her request, but when she begged more and more earnestly, and fell at his feet, he at last gave in. No sooner had the maiden reached the bedside of the king than he and all the rest of the castle awoke, and the youth was laid hold of and cast into prison. "You may only have the beautiful princess if you take away the hill which shuts off the view from my windows," said the king, "and you must finish your work within 8 days." The king's son began and dug and shovelled without leaving off, but after 7 days he saw how little he had done, so he fell into great sorrow and gave up all hope. On the evening of the 7th day, however, the fox appeared and said, "You do not deserve that I should take any more trouble about you. Nevertheless, you have faithfully tried to fulfill your task, so lie down to sleep. I will finish it for you." The next morning when the king's son awoke and looked out of the window, the hill was gone. Full of joy, he ran to the king and told him the task was performed, and whether he liked it or not, the king had to keep his promise and give up the princess. So the king's son and the princess set forth together, and it was not long before the trusty fox came up with them. Then the king's son told the princess how he was taking her to be the bride of the king who had the golden horse. But the beautiful princess wept and said that it was not true she was promised to him, and she did not wish to be his bride. All she wanted was to go home with the king's son. Besides, the golden horse did not belong to the wicked old king at all. It was her own, and he had stolen it from her. So the good fox said to the king's son, "If the beautiful princess chooses you, yours she must be. Now go and recover for her her golden horse." "But how may I get the horse and keep the princess if I go, one man as I am, to that rascally king who has a castle full of soldiers?" asked the king's son. "That I will tell you," answered the fox. "First take the beautiful maiden to the king. Thinking he has her at last in his power, he will rejoice and gladly have her golden horse led forth to exchange. Mount it as soon as possible, then take the princess by the hand, swing her up onto the horse before you, and gallop swiftly away. No one will be able to bring you back." All was brought to pass successfully, and the king's son, in spite of all the soldiers about, carried off the beautiful princess on the golden horse. The fox did not remain behind, and he said to the youth, "Now I will help you to recover your father's golden bird. When you come near the castle where the golden bird is to be found, let the maiden down, and I will take her into my care. Then ride with the golden horse boldly into the castle yard. When the golden bird is brought forth, seize the cage in your hand and gallop away to us like the wind." Well, this plan succeeded too, and the king's son was about to ride home with all his wonderful treasures, when the fox said, "Now you are returning home with good success, yet before I leave you I will give you still one more piece of advice. Be careful about 2 things. Do not beg off any thief or other malefactor from his punishment, and do not sit at the edge of any well." And then he ran off into the wood. So the prince rode on with the beautiful maiden, and his road took him again through the village in which his 2 brothers had remained. There was a great stir and noise there, and when he asked about what was going on, he was told that 2 men were going to be hanged for their many evil deeds. As he came nearer to the place, he saw that the 2 men were his 2 brothers, who had been playing all kinds of wicked pranks in the neighbourhood. At once he began to think that he should like to get his brothers off from their punishment, and he inquired whether there was any way by which he could set them free. "If you will pay for them, they may go free," answered the people. "But why should you waste your money on setting free wicked men when they have by no means repented the evil they have done?" But the king's son did not think twice about it. He paid for his brothers, and when they were set free, they all went on their way together. Soon they came to the wood where the Fox had first met them. The sun shone hotly outside, but within the wood it was cool and pleasant. So the two brothers said, "Let us rest a while here by the well, and eat and drink." The Prince agreed, and forgetting once more the Fox's counsel, he sat down upon the edge of the well. At once the two brothers threw him backward into the well. Then they took the maiden, the horse, and the bird, and went home to their father. "Here we bring you not only the golden bird," said they, "we have won the golden horse also, and the maiden from the golden castle." And they threatened the princess with death if she told the truth. So the king believed their tale, and rejoiced greatly, but the horse would not eat, the bird would not sing, and the maiden sat and wept. Meantime it happened that the well into which they had cast the younger brother was dry, and he fell upon soft moss without being hurt at all, but he could not get out again. Now even in this strait the faithful Fox did not leave him. It came bounding along, leapt straight down to him in the pit, and said, "Once again by your disobedience you have forfeited all right to my help, yet I cannot leave you altogether. I will give you one more chance to follow my advice, and even at this late day, if you are obedient, you may still be happy. Your brothers have surrounded the wood with watchers who are to kill you if you are ever able to get out of this well. So you must change clothes with the man who is cutting wood up above by the roadside. Then none will recognize you, and you will pass safely by the men your brothers have set to catch you. But mind you wear the poor clothes you will get from the woodcutter, and do not exchange them for fine ones till you are safe in your father's presence." Then the Fox bade the Prince grasp his tail and keep tight hold of it, and so he pulled him up out of the well. There the youth exchanged his good clothes for the ragged ones of the woodcutter, and in this way he arrived safely at his father's castle. Now he would have liked to exchange his poor clothes for fine ones before he came into the presence of his father and the beautiful maiden, but this time he remembered the Fox's wise counsel, and obeyed him. Thus no man knew who he was, and the elder brothers never even dreamed that he was in the castle, but all of a sudden the bird began to sing, the horse began to eat, and the beautiful maiden left off weeping. "I am so happy," she said, "I feel as if my true bridegroom had come." And she grew so full of courage, withal, that she told the king the whole story of what the elder brothers had done. At once the king commanded that all people who were in his castle should be brought before him, and amongst them came the youth in his ragged clothes. But the maiden knew him at once, and fell upon his neck. So the wicked brothers were beaten out of the kingdom, but the Prince married the Princess, the Fox was ever their friend, and nothing was wanting to their happiness. Section 69.